Hello, my name is Raquel Gutierrez. I am in a 3305 Kinesiology course for sports sociology. This is my home presentation for gender equity in sports. Okay, let's get started. My point over the topic and as a whole is that though times are changing and gender ideology changes with it, it is relatively slow, but there is a progression over time. As there is with most things, and I feel like that's a common view to hold. So, first need to address what is gender ideology to understand gender equity. So gender ideology is pretty much how people relate gender to sports and how they view gender and how gender affects them. So for the key components of this in relation to sports is that there are two corresponding sexes that are basically opposites. So it starts with cisgender, or you're born the same gender that you end up being, men, and then cisgendered straight women as well as straight men. And so then men happen to be masculine, females are feminine, and that men are at the top of the food chain because they have the most power, is that they're the masculine men. And the two sexes, the two are complete opposites. So they just don't have any overlap, their roles don't overlap, they should be opposites in an ideal sports world way. And then anything that goes outside of this whole ideology is kind of off limits, or it's not supported, or it's discouraged. So it's like a two-sex system where men are on top, and the men who are in power, they want to stay in power because power gives you access, power gives you opportunity, power is powerful and impactful. And so then they promote this dominant sport ideology of the two-sex to complete opposite gender system, and that keeps them in power by making others less capable of affecting the system by giving them less influence, basically, in the sports world. So you might ask, why? Because, power is powerful. Power can get you lots of places, and if you have power, most likely you have more freedom and you have more say, and everyone wants say at the end of the day. And it's the motivator. Having power makes you want to stay in power. So you might ask, how? Well, so basically they perpetuate this idea of their male-dominant gender ideology that's male-dominant, male-identified, and male-centered. So all of that meaning that, it's by men for men, that it's defined by men who are in power, so they make the rules for it, and then it's revolving around them, so they are the most important. The most important men, the highest up in this hierarchy, is the masculine man, the athletic man, the strong man, the powerful man. And they perpetuate those ideas, and they create them, and they put them out there, and then they put out there that if you aren't this guy, you're not at the top of the food chain, you're like on the lesser tiers, and that makes you weaker, less significant, less able to affect change, less capable. And it limits your opportunities, and doing that ensures that everyone sees the sports world in the light that the people at the top are casting it, and they discourage people from questioning it or challenging it. So power is the motivator in this situation. How does this ideology affect the individual in relation to sports? So having this ideology in place changes how an individual would see the world, meaning it changes how they see themselves as a man or a woman, or how they measure how much of a man or a woman they are by how masculine or straight they are, or feminine and straight as well, so how much they are a lady or a man. And it affects how we organize ourselves, both in organizations and socially, so women with women, men with men, because Gender is kind of the organizing principle of all of our social worlds, including in the sports world, most dominantly there too. So then you have the Allied Female Rebellion. This is where change comes in from those traditional backgrounds. And let's start. And this also includes, lesbians, gays, non-masculine men, anybody who doesn't fit into that description of the top elite masculine man. So we'll start with females. This is a quote from Simone Biles, an article written about her, and I put it in here because it's representative of how far women have come in the sports world, so I just thought it was good to show change, and it's just talking about how she is the best gymnast probably alive, if not ever, in my opinion, but, the stats show it, so that's just a little quote about that. The pictures are just for fun, keep things interesting. So, the most important thing, I think, that has affected gender ideology and the change that's come through it is Title IX. So, Title IX probably has been summed up in this quote, of course, that no person in the U.S. shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in or be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any educational program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. So simply put, any program that receives government funding cannot discriminate on the basis of sex for anyone who wants to join, participate, or become a part of a program that is receiving government funding. So this legislation was passed in the 70s, I think 1972, if I'm right, and it really was made to be a proponent for women to make sure that their educational needs are met and given the same opportunities that men are getting. But due to court of law, in some cases, it's actually been most beneficial to extracurriculars like sports and opportunities like that. So it really lent for women's rights and just kind of provided a pathway. And because of that, it's kind of been almost infamous versus just being a famous piece of legislation. So the effects of Title IX would be that, because of this, the law has led the way for women to become more active in sports, but also just a huge increase in participation in general in sports-related programs all across the country, that are in schools. So that's a great way to start kids out, and it just gets more girls into the sports that they wouldn't normally be playing with the kind of discouraged ideology that we have in place. So I think personally that, the legislation has put a lot of women in the place to get somewhere where sports would never take them before. So basically what I'm saying there is where there is the NBA and where there is the WNBA, the resources are really the difference between women playing basketball and then getting really good, having all those coaches offering the opportunity to get better and become at the same level of a professional male athlete versus a professional female athlete, even though they're in the same sport, because they kind of don't start maybe the same age. Maybe the boys start first, they get a further background, they're more supported, they have better resources, maybe they get a tad better, maybe they're more athletic, who knows. And I think that this legislation could lead to mandatory checks on resources, making sure that just because one's a female sport or a male sport, that they all get the same opportunities in that aspect as well. Because once women are at the same level and getting the same stuff, most likely they're going to create a place for women to go where it's not the WNBA versus the NBA kind of difference of status, where it's millionaires and teachers' salary earners, that kind of difference. I think once we're there, that all kind of comes together and it kind of fills that gap between male and female sports and viewership and just participation in general. So, after education is over, I think that it could still be effective. So, This is a quote from our lecture about gender ideology, sports gender ideology, and it's that it's designed to marginalize gays, lesbians by categorizing them as being out of the normative bounds, so outside of gender norms, basically. And so the next topic would be gender norms. So those allies I was mentioning before, gays, lesbians, non-masculine men, non-feminine women, and how gender norms affects that group of people, but also all of us. So, basically, another quote from our lecture would have to say that sports have gender ideology that is designed to, make sure that people who are low stay low on the totem pole. So, what are the gender norms that surround the sports world? So, of course, as I said before, men equal masculine, women equal feminine. So when you ask yourself, what is masculinity, you kind of, when you first imagine it, you think, okay, violence, you think macho, you think, puffed up muscles, big guys, strong men. You don't think feelings, you don't think, sensitive, you might even think like ruling with an iron fist type, no emotions about it, kind of maybe impulsive. And so that's kind of the idea you kind of get around masculinity, kind of like a cold, hard shell. And then you go femininity, and you might think, soft, flowers, caring, mothering. You think all those things, and you don't get that athletic view, that strong view. You don't get the hard, emotionalist view. You get that soft, girly, vibe, I guess. And so then when you think about women versus men and gender norms based around sports, you kind of think, well, facing sexuality, is it normal to be gay in a male sport? Be a gay man in a male sport? Is it normal to be a bisexual man in a male sport? Same thing for women. Is it normal to be a lesbian in a female sport? Is it normal to be a bisexual woman in a female sport? And when you think about that question, you kind of have to think about the percentage of gay people that are in the world in any given population, and then think about the percentage of gay, lesbian, bisexual people that are in the sports world. And it makes you think, are they kicked out? Are they hiding? Because the numbers are just not proportional to where it would be if it was, free-flowing, I guess. So then you tie this all together, and the question you can ask is, what is really being promoted? Who is being affected by these gender norms in relation to sports? And it really just shows that if you don't fit the bill, generally you're not as involved in sports, you're not as encouraged to be a part of it, and maybe you might even be, like socially pariahed because of you not fitting into what is normal, so per se. And that is basically all I had to say on the topic. Again, times are changing. I think there's a far place to go, but I think it's possible. Thank you all for listening. Again, this is my home presentation too. I am Raquel Gutierrez for my 3305 Kinesiology Sports Sociology course.